Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev has vowed to fight until Armenia leaves the disputed Karabakh region. Azerbaijan's defense ministry has claimed to have killed at least 2,300 Armenian soldiers since the fighting started on Sunday. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin and French counterpart Emmanuel Macron have called for an immediate ceasefire. Eleven people have been killed in a car bomb attack on a military checkpoint in Afghanistan's southern Helmand province. A spokesman for the Helmand governor said 7 security personnel and 4 civilians were killed, blaming the Taliban for the attack. The Taliban have not commented on the claims. Israel's military vehicles have infiltrated Palestine's border in Gaza, east of Khan Yunis city. Local media says military bulldozers razed Palestinian farmlands. It said Israeli troops shot fire to force the farmers and shepherds in the area to flee as they razed their land. Protests have erupted in several parts of India as another woman has died after being gang raped in northern Uttar Pradesh state. Demonstrators clashed with police after the 22-year-old woman from the Dalit community was assaulted in the Balrampur district. The incident comes as a 19-year-old Dalit woman's death 2 days back sparked widespread anger in India. India has registered nearly 1,200 COVID-19 deaths and almost 87,000 new infections in the past 24 hours. The virus has claimed over 1,000 more lives in Brazil since yesterday, taking the death toll to over 143,000. In Pakistan, 5 people have died from the virus, bringing the count to 6,484 with over 312,000 infected. Globally, coronavirus has claimed over 1 million lives and infected more than 33.8 million people so far. News coming in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev has vowed to fight until Armenia leaves the disputed Karabakh region. He said peace will be established in the region when the Armenian government fulfills their demand over the Karabakh claim. Azerbaijan's defense ministry has claimed to have killed at least 2,300 Armenian soldiers since the fighting started on Sunday. The two countries have rejected all calls for dialogue, including Russia's President Vladimir Putin's offer to mediate talks. Putin and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron also called for an immediate ceasefire. Macron also took a shot at Turkey, accusing it of reckless and dangerous statements backing Azerbaijan. Meanwhile, Iran says a rocket has landed on the Iranian soil as part of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. State media said this is the 4th rocket that landed in the Khoda-Afrin border area. Now 11 people have been killed in a car bomb attack on a military checkpoint in Afghanistan's southern Helmand province. The spokesman for the Helmand governor said 7 security personnel and 4 civilians were killed, blaming the Taliban for the attack. He said 3 soldiers and 1 child were wounded in the attack. The Taliban have not commented on the claims yet. The European Parliament has welcomed the intra-Afghan negotiations, calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the country. In a joint statement, members of the European Parliament called for the talks to be inclusive and representatives of all factions of the society. They said a comprehensive peace process is a precondition to end the 4 decades of death and destruction in the country. The members said the talks are an opportunity to bring stability, security and peace to Afghanistan. The European Union Parliament assured its continuous solidarity and support to the Afghan people, government and security forces. The statement said the European Parliament stands ready to facilitate and support the peace process. Afghanistan's chief peace negotiator Abdullah says he does not expect the results of the US presidential election to change the Afghan peace process. In an interview, Abdullah said neither Democrats nor the Republicans would want to see all the sacrifices or all the gains they have made in Afghanistan go in vain. He said as per his experiences and interactions with the US officials, the policy will not change. Abdullah also said the upcoming conference in Geneva in November will be important to build momentum at the negotiating table. Earlier in his visit to Pakistan, Abdullah met with President Arif Alvi, Prime Minister Imran Khan, as well as the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. A US-led coalition forces base has been targeted with multiple rocket strikes near Iraq's northern Kurdistan region. Iraqi Kurdistan's counter-terrorism service said the US-installed anti-missile air defense system Patriot have thwarted 2 of the rockets. It said popular mobilization forces carried out the attack against the coalition. However, in a statement, US-led coalition spokesman Colonel Wayne Marotta said the rocket fire did not strike the coalition base. He said there are no casualties or damage to report and the incident is under investigation. Earlier, Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi pledged to protect foreign missions after the United States threat to shut down its embassy in Baghdad. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, which occurred hours after the pledge. Meanwhile, Israel's military vehicles have infiltrated Palestine's border in Gaza east of Khan Yunis city. Local media says military bulldozers razed Palestinian farmlands. It said Israeli troops shot fire to force the farmers and the shepherds in area to flee as they razed the land. Israel still controls the land borders and has access to sea and airspace in the Gaza Strip after 14 years of apparent disengagement. Gaza's 2 million population remains under occupation and a strict siege by the Israeli forces. Moving on, protests have broken out in several parts of India as another woman died after being gang raped. Demonstrators clashed with police after the 22-year-old woman from the Dalit community was assaulted in northern Uttar Pradesh state. The protesters blocked the roads for hours chanting, "Hang the rapist." Police say they have registered complaints of the rape and murder and arrested 2 men in connection with the case. The latest incident occurred in the Balrampur district, 500 kilometers from the Hathras district where the earlier attack happened. On Tuesday, a 19-year-old woman from the lowest rung of India's caste system died after being gang raped in Hathras. The district administration has imposed emergency law in victims' village and banned the entry of all outsiders, including media persons. Pakistan's army says a 65-year-old woman has been wounded in yet another ceasefire violation by the Indian troops along the line of control. In a statement, the military's media wing, ISPR, said Indian troops deliberately targeted the civilian population with automatic weapons and heavy mortars. On Tuesday, a soldier and a 15-year-old boy were martyred in unprovoked Indian firing. The Foreign Office says Indian troops have committed over 2,300 ceasefire violations this year so far. Now, EU leaders are set to meet in Brussels for 2 days of discussions on tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean. Earlier, European Council President Charles Michel sent a letter to EU leaders to outline the objectives of the summit. Michel said the main focus of the meeting will be on relations with Turkey on recent tensions in the Mediterranean. He added, European Union-China relations, the poisoning of Alexei Navalny, the situation in Belarus and escalation in the Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict will also be on the agenda. Leaders will also discuss the novel coronavirus pandemic and its effects on the European economy. The summit was initially planned for the 24th of September, but later postponed to 25th of September as President Michel was in quarantine. French President Emmanuel Macron says Belarusian opposition leader is open to a dialogue with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Elysee presidential palace said Macron spoke to Putin by telephone after visiting exiled Belarusian opposition leader Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. In a statement, the palace said Macron urged President Putin to consider Tsikhanouskaya's proposal. It said the two presidents backed the idea of mediation by the Organization for Security and Cooperation. Earlier, Macron pledged Europe's support for the people of Belarus after his meeting with Tsikhanouskaya. Belarus has been marred by protests and political unrest following a presidential election widely criticized as rigged. Now, U.S. House lawmakers have slammed the country's Defense Department over plans to withdraw thousands of troops from Germany. At a House Armed Service Committee hearing, bipartisan legislators grilled two senior Pentagon officials over the lack of details about the planned pullout. The panel pressed the officials about the time and cost of withdrawal and the level of coordination with the European allies leading up to the final decision. Pentagon official James Anderson said the military did not have the required details and pledged to share plans as they are developed. When asked if it was the U.S. President Donald Trump or the Pentagon who made the decision, Anderson said he was not aware of the conversation. Earlier in July, U.S. announced plans to withdraw about 12,000 troops from Germany, accusing Berlin of failing to meet NATO's defense spending target. Now, India has registered nearly 1,200 COVID-19 deaths and almost 87,000 new infections in the past 24 hours. Globally, coronavirus has claimed over 1 million lives and infected more than 33.8 million people so far. More details in this report.
COVID-19 is showing no signs of slowing, forcing countries to choose between collapsing economies and restrictive measures to contain the second wave of the outbreak. India's coronavirus fatalities have jumped to over 6.3 million, with the death toll nearing 99,000. A recent report by the Indian Health Authority says more than 63 million people may have contracted COVID-19. This makes the tally about 10 times higher than the official count.
जिन्होंने अपनी समस्याओं को नजरअंदाज करते हुए
The death statistics coming forward tell us that majority of the cases are because of delayed response. It means that it came from those who ignored the initial symptoms and comorbidities. They took home remedies and didn't visit doctors. When the symptoms increased and they faced problems, they visited hospitals. This is very painful for both health workers and patients.
The fatal virus is now gaining a foothold in Canada's most populous province, Ontario, which is witnessing an exponential increase in locally transmitted cases. In America, states continue to report record new cases, fearing an explosion in COVID-19 cases as the influenza season approaches. In Latin America, the disease is claiming thousands of lives every day, with Brazil being hit the hardest as it reported over 1,000 more deaths today. With the government's refusal to implement restrictions, Sao Paulo state has reached out to a Chinese company for bulk buying of a prospect vaccine.
Our target is simple. So we will bring enough vaccine to Brazil. The most important, we also bring the affordable vaccine to be here and to benefit everyone in this country to against this COVID-19 pandemic.
The situation in Western Europe is getting worse by the day, with new infections back to peak pandemic levels in France. Spain has locked down Madrid again after it accounted for more than a third of the total cases diagnosed in the country over the past 2 weeks.
Meanwhile, the coronavirus pandemic continues to follow a flat curve in Pakistan as the recovery rate in the country remains steady at 95%. The Health Ministry says there are 8,825 active cases in the country as of 297,000 people have recovered. The ministry said 5 people have lost their lives to the COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to 6,484. It said 543 more tested positive overnight, taking the number of total detected cases to over 312,000. The ministry said more than 137,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while over 99,000 have been reported in Punjab so far. In the federal capital, Islamabad, over 16,500 people have tested positive for the disease since the outbreak. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Moving on now. The United Nations and world leaders have urged immediate action on biodiversity conservation at a UN summit. The participants at the Biodiversity Summit discussed how to set the goals of the post-2020 framework and the means to achieve it.
Leaders from more than 100 countries, regions and international organizations spoke at the summit. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has pledged to preserve the country's valued biodiversity and resist the effects of climate change. Khan said the country is collaborating with local communities to protect its ecological diversity. He said Pakistan is among the top 10 countries vulnerable to climate change, but his government is planting 10 billion trees to fight off the impending disaster. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for greater ambition to reverse biodiversity loss.
10 years ago, we secured commitments that should have protected our planet. We have largely failed. But where effort has been made, the benefits to our economies, human and planetary health are irrefutable. Nature is resilient, and it can recover if we ease our relentless assault.
While Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro vowed to protect the Amazon from international greed, French President Emmanuel Macron called biodiversity humans' life insurance. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson warned of the consequences of upsetting the balance of nature.
Upset the delicate balance of nature that's been achieved over tens of millions of years, and the consequences could be catastrophic for the economy, for climate, for food security, for public health, for all the sustainable development goals. Yet alongside the growing evidence of looming disaster, I also see growing evidence of desire to avert it.
President of 75th UN General Assembly Volker Bozkir said each year 13 million hectares of forests are lost and 1 million species are at risk of extinction. He said in the last 50 years, vertebrates have declined by 68%. Bozkir also warned if humans continue down this path, they will jeopardize their ability to fight diseases and extreme events.
Now, the raging wildfires in California have broken all previous annual records. The fires have so far torched over 3.9 million acres since January, far exceeding any single year in the state's history. Scientists attribute the frequent and prolonged bouts of extreme heat, high winds and dry lightning to climate change. The Shasta County Sheriff said a badly burned evacuee of the Zog fire succumbed to his burns, marking the 30th fatality in the coastal state. Fire Protection Department said Zog fire is at 7% containment, while the Glass fire stands at just 2% amid irrespectable high winds. The 2020 fire season in the U.S. has so far killed 30 people in California since August 15th, while 10 have died in Oregon and Washington. Meanwhile, the death toll in floods following torrential rains in Nigeria have climbed to 95. Talking to media, State Emergency Management Agency officials said 16 more people died in 19 regions of the Jigawa state. Authorities say thousands have been left homeless while acres of cultivated lands destroyed. They say the Jigawa state has been hit the hardest. Burkina Faso, Niger, Senegal and other countries in the region have also been hit by heavy rains and flooding this year. In West Africa, the rainy season runs from June to September. Now in Argentina, poverty and economic woes are growing large and pandemic has worsened the long-standing crisis. Analysts observe Argentina's economy has contracted a record 19.1%, while nearly half of its population has been dragged into poverty. More details in this report.
The Great Depression and the pandemic fallout have affected nearly half of Argentina's population. 3.5 million people have lost their jobs during the lockdown to stem the spread of the outbreak. According to official statistics, 35.5% of Argentines were living in the poverty in the second half of the last year. The Catholic University of Argentina estimates this year poverty rate has spiked 47% at the end of June.
The impact has been on the productive structure, on the structure of job creation, on the self-employed, even on the informal worker. There is greater general poverty. We are all a little poorer we already were last year, and now with greater inequality.
The numbers reflect an everyday reality for Argentines. Small production companies have been hit hard as the activity came to halt. Unemployment has dived up to 13.1%. Analysts say a wider work plan is needed to cope with the situation.
Get out of this poverty crisis requires a lot of imagination on the part of those in charge. Traditional programs of a few public works and a slight improvement in wages will not be enough. But a wide work plan would need to be deployed, building a strong foundation in the popular and social economy in small to medium companies.
Argentina has recently struck a deal with its creditors to restructure about $65 billion foreign debt.
Now, Chinese are celebrating the 71st National Day to commemorate the founding of the People's Republic of China. Events are being held in mainland China, Hong Kong, Macau and Taiwan for 8 days-long holidays.
China observes the 30th of September as Martyrs' Day to commemorate those who sacrificed their lives for independence. President Xi Jinping and other leaders attended a ceremony at Tiananmen Square to present flower baskets to deceased national heroes. At the same spot, Beijing held flag-raising ceremony to mark the National Day. Mao Zedong proclaimed the founding of China from Tiananmen Square on the 1st of October in 1949. People from all over the country have gathered at the square to express the feeling of patriotism. The 2020 National Day Gala was broadcast on channels and portals of China's Central Television. Divided into several chapters, the gala showed China's achievements, especially in epidemic prevention and control. Apart from the mainland, many actors and singers from Hong Kong, Macau and Taiwan brought wonderful performance to audiences as well.
Now, Greece's most popular tourist site, the Acropolis, has been flooded in light to better illuminate the finer details of the ancient monuments on the hill. More about the new lighting system in this report.
An enhanced lighting system was set up to capture the architectural craft of all the temples at the historical site of Acropolis, from the columns of the Parthenon and Propylaea, the caryatids of the Erechtheion, as well as the walls, stones and surrounding areas of the site. Monuments that had been in darkness were lit up for the first time. Lighting designers spent 2 months studying the Acropolis to come up with the design, which uses lighting schemes of different shades and intensity.
The light of the 21st century now embraces the Acropolis. The inauguration of the new lighting of the Acropolis is a celebration that goes beyond borders and languages, because the values that were born here are universal.
The Acropolis is visited by millions of tourists each year. In classic antiquity, it was the hub of Athenian culture and represented the splendor and power of the ancient Greeks. Over the centuries, its monuments have withstood fires, pillaging, earthquakes, and the effects of climate change.
In business stories now, European stocks are advancing cautiously, tracking gains on the Wall Street in the previous session. European stock 600 is trading just above the flat line. London's FTSE 100 has gained over 0.5%. The CAC 40 in Paris has advanced close to 0.5%, but Frankfurt's DAX has edged out fractionally. Earlier, Japan's Tokyo Stock Exchange halted trading due to a technical issue, while many major markets in the region were closed for holidays. Now let's have a look at the weather updates across the world. Well, that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Take care.